Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to an incredible and spectacular game from the TCEC Season 25 semifinals that you can follow now on the official and beautiful TCEC website. We have here the two most powerful chess engines in the world, Leela C Zero and Stockfish 16, battling it out in one of the most incredible defensive games that I've seen in my life. Like the art of the attack, I think the art of the defense is also very important for us to follow, because probably many of us get into defensive problems, then we start to sweat, we don't know what to do. Like myself, I find myself also many times in huge positional problems, and I miss, of course, sometimes some defensive tactics. So in my opinion, this is really beautiful, spectacular defensive game with great king maneuvers, with beautiful repositions of minor pieces, great defensive strategies, defensive tactics, counterattacks, all of the beautiful defensive elements that we love to see, of course, in chess game. Pay with attention, in my opinion, one of the best chess games so far from the TCEC competitions. And before we start to analyze the game, I wanted to talk about a little bit here of my board settings. I've decided to make some changes here. I'll do this particular board only for this game. I would maybe love for you to participate in my decision. Should I continue with this particular board that's now here? I like this board because it points out the arrows that I like to use here in my analysis. If you don't like the board, I will change and go to the older board, but for this video I've decided to do this one. I think this is really a beautiful chessboard for some analysis. So let's see now what happened. Leela C Zero versus Stockfish 16, and this game had also huge impact in the whole TCEC semifinals of the season 25. Pay good attention, in my opinion. As I said, really brutal spectacular game here. With the white pieces, Leela C Zero opened with the move d4. Stockfish response was knight to f6, c4. We have now the accelerated Queen's Indian with the move b6, f3, preparing, of course, the move e4 here, bishop to b7, e4. Leela C Zero grabs, of course, the center, has now this powerful central control with the pawns. We have now the move d6, knight to c3, and after bishop to g6, bishop to e3, and bishop to g7. Now we have reached the last pre-arranged line move by the organizer. From this point on, the engines are calculating the position for themselves. So this is, of course, not the optimal position for black. I would not recommend you here to play this particular setup with the black pieces, because if you're playing the dark square via fianchetto, then you should not go into the light square fianchetto 2. Usually when you're building this King's Indian structures with here bishop to g7 and g6, usually this bishop after move e5 should be an attacker here on this side of the board. Usually you're trying, of course, to sacrifice it sometimes in some lines of the brutal King's Indian structures on h3. Or if you're going with the Queen's Indian, Nimzo Indian, Bogo Indian ideas in the beginning with the move b6, then this bishop should be very useful on this side of the board. It should actually pin the knight in some lines and control further, or the e4 square should really try to mess up a little bit white's development here in the center of the board. So of course it's not the optimal opening, but that's simple as that. That's how the TCEC tournaments are functioning. They're setting up some positions, and then usually black has to defend this position. White is, of course, on the attacking side. So here after move bishop to g7, Leela C Zero continue with the move queen to d2, building this queen and bishop battery, trying, of course, to trade off the darker bishop, launch a flank attack, and build maybe a rook and queen battery and deliver checkmate on the h file. We have a6 by Stockfish, bishop to e2 with the preparation g4, h4, simply putting more pressure on the king side. King side castling, knight to h3. You see the bishop on c8 is much more powerful in these types of structures, because now you could not play this move knight to h3. If this move happens, of course, you immediately pick up with the bishop, the knight on h3, and create a messed up pawn structure here on the king side. So you see this double fianchetto, in my opinion, is simply too weak setup here for black. So in the game c5 by the fish, d5, Leela C Zero occupies the center. We have now the move b5, and here Stockfish makes, I think, a huge decision. b5 is very tricky move. It leads into ideas. It's, of course, not the Benko gambit anymore, but it leads into similar ideas like in the Benko gambit. If you're familiar with the Benko gambit, then after something like, I don't know, c takes b5, a takes b5, knight to b5, okay, you took a pawn, but after a couple more moves, after knight to a6 and similar stuff, white has problems where to castle. You will eventually, I think, castle king side here, and then black will simply move the queen somewhere, I don't know where, but the main concept here is to place the rook then on the b file. So the rook from f to b8 would be played. The rook is staying here on the a file, this other rook, and basically with the support of the dark square bishop, black would then have a massive attack here on the queen side. I think it's a decent compensation for the lost pawn in the beginning of this opening. So in my opinion, nothing wrong also if white wants to go into this particular line, but then I think you have to castle kingside, and then this whole concept by white to create this dark square bishop trade is not working anymore, because you will probably not launch a flank attack anymore because you have already castled on kingside, and you are not, of course, weakening your king. So that's why it's, I think, already a very important moment of the game. After move b5, Leela C Zero doesn't care. Plays on this plan that we have talked about in the beginning. Trading off the dark square bishop, launching a flank attack, and that's the way to go. We have e6, we have bishop to g7, knight to f2, and now b4. And this moment is also now very important. Here you could play maybe the move b takes c4, but you have lost, I think, a little bit your pawn mobility. This knight is creating a blockade against this beautiful double pawns. In one moment, we will eventually take out now the pawn on c4. We can still castle, but at least in this scenario, the a file is not open, and black will have a tough time somehow to activate the pieces on the b file. But even if you do that, you really need too many tempi, too many moves in order to make some kind of an attack on the b file. So you could do that, but Stockfish played now the move b4, the knight retreats. Now we have here the move a5 by the fish, and now knight to e3. So it's almost like Stockfish helped out Leela C Zero to continue further with its plan, because now the knight is also removed to the king side. Now we have another attacker that could be included on the king side, so nothing wrong so far in white's position. h5, Stockfish blocks out the potential g4 move. We have h3 preparing g4, rook to e8, and now rook to d1. And this move is very epic. You'll see now in the next couple of moves why this move is so epic, so brutal. In the beginning, it seemed to me, what the hell is Leela doing here? Why is Leela going with the rook on d1? Obviously, you're trying, of course, these ideas with d takes e6, maybe picking up the pawn on d6. But the problem about this move, rook to d1, is that I thought that there's no way that in this particular game this king will end somehow here on the queen side, because you never castle queen side, you never move the rook somehow, so no way that the king is going there. Of course, as we talked about, even if you castle kingside, then you have lost your whole attack with the move g4. So you don't want to play g4 if you castle kingside. So really strange move. But after bishop to c8, the problem here for white is that actually after d takes e6 and rook to e6, you don't have so many great attacking chances here around the square d6. So it's not so dangerous what white is doing here on the d file. Black will have, I think, also good development with I don't know, knight to d7, knight to e5, and this is perfect. Fine. So that's why after move bishop to c8, Leela still continues with the g4 plan, and I thought, where the hell is this going? Is this king going to end up? Because look at this. Now we're attacking still the king side. The king is in the center. No queen side castling is possible, but here Leela will pull off one of the most incredible positional ideas of all times. Here e5, we have h4. Leela continues. Knight from b to d7, queen to c1. Very interesting move. Leela is actually preparing to go now with the king on d2, c2, and then to b1. Very crazy stuff. So that's why Stockfish continues with a4. Leela continues with king to d2, and Stockfish, of course, plays queen to a5 with the threat of b3. But now comes the dirty idea here by Leela. Leela plays king to c2 anyway. Allows here even Stockfish to play the move b3. You don't want to play, of course, a takes b3, king to b3, exposing your king, because probably you get checkmated here, or with the move queen to a4. But Leela C Zero played now the beautiful king to b1. And what should now black do? For instance, one of the options is, of course, to further continue the attack with the move a3. This wasn't played in the game, but I was curious why Stockfish didn't play this move. a3 is, of course, opening up the whole position. But actually, after a takes b3, a takes b2, queen to b2, you don't have so many attacking chances. You would probably try knight to b8, knight to a6, knight to b4, a reposition of the knight, but actually white can defend this. White will simply continue with king to c2. You will try knight to a6, we attack the queen, you attack the king, but now with king to b1, we can trade off a couple more pieces, and the game is simplified enough. White is continuing the game with an extra pawn, and slowly but surely with knight to c3 methods we will kick away this knight from this annoying square on b4. In one moment we'll play b4, c5 somehow, and probably this d pawn will cost here black the whole game. So after move king to b1, that's why Stockfish played b takes a3. But now Leela applies the beautiful defensive strategy, hiding behind your enemy's pawns, because now there's simply no file that could be opened. Of course Stockfish tries a3, but we play simply b3. Beautiful defensive structures. Now basically these two pawns are standing in the way of black's attack. These two pawns are really annoying. So here in the continuation, Stockfish tried rook to a7, knight to f1. We have rook to b7, rook to d3. Leela brings a new defender into the game. Leela wants to first of all secure the position on the queen side. Here nothing can change, because black will never be able to somehow play h takes g4. Then we'll simply play on this idea h5, breaking through, and then maybe, as I said, opening up the h file, maybe even deliver checkmate with the rook and queen battery. So Leela first wants to defend the position on the queen side. We have now the move knight to b6, rook to c3, knight to a4. Very interesting move. Look how Stockfish is using now every piece in his attack, because if you play now b takes a4, then of course rook to b1 is winning the game on spot. Leela is not falling for this, plays now rook to e3, bishop to d7 by the fish, and now g5. Leela continues now finally the pressure on the king side. We have knight to h7, knight to d2. Of course, controlling now finally the b1 square, but now Stockfish plays f6 here. Stockfish wants also a clarification on this side of the board. If possible, also somehow maybe in some lines include, if possible, somehow the bishop into the attack on f5. So far it's not possible because the pawn on e4 is standing. But if in some lines somehow white pushes the pawn on e5, then bishop to f5 should be very dangerous then for white to handle. So what to do? Here Leela again didn't take out the knight on a4. Again, I was curious what would have happened if you play b takes a4. Then rook to b2 is going to happen. Again, very dangerous. You play something like this, king to f6. You have to play rook to c3. This other rook is coming into the game. The engine gives here still a good continuation for white, but this is risky. You have to play something like bishop to d3. Now the bishop is not optimal, blocked out by its own pawn. Maybe black can somehow reroute the knight into the attack. I'm not sure, but as I said, here Leela didn't want to risk anything. After move f6, Leela C0 play g takes f6, knight to f6, and now simply continued the pressure here on the g file. Didn't take out now the knight on a4. Stockfish continues with knight to g8, knight to d1, and we have knight to b2, knight to c3. Again, repositions, great defensive moves, bringing more defenders into the game. Beautiful strategy by Leela. Rook to a7. Stockfish doesn't know where to attack anymore because Leela plays, of course, a brilliant defense. In the game, king takes a2, finally by Leela. Leela is saying, you don't have any more attackers, you don't have any threats here. In the game, rook to f8, played by Stockfish, and now knight from c to b1, attacking now also the weak pawn on a3. We have king to h7, rook to c3, knight to h6, knight to f1, knight to f7, queen to e3. Slowly but surely the game is changing. Again, Leela C0 is going into a different direction, tries maybe attack further the king. Knight to h8, we have queen to g5, very dangerous move. And now here Stockfish finally played the move knight to a4 again. Stockfish is desperately now trying to open the position in front of white's king. What should he do? The huge threat actually here, instead, let's see other options than to play the move knight to a4. The huge threat by white is actually here the move queen to e7 followed with queen to d6. What you could do here is maybe the move rook to f4 to prevent something like this. And then after knight to e3, rook to b7 and queen to e7 again. It's very risky. But even if you play something like rook to f7 to prevent it, then there is this dirty idea. f4. f4, very dangerous. You play something like e takes f4, then bishop to h5. Comes in a brutal way into the game. I think black is busted here. Black is losing the game. Look at this beautiful defensive structure. Knight is protecting the rook is protecting the pawn, the knight controls everything. This knight is close enough to the action, so it would be, of course, a devastating here game for black. So that's why knight to a4 by Stockfish, but now Leela says, show me what you got. Leela says, you don't have anything here, dude. B takes a4, simply grabs out now the knight and goes into favorable, hopes to get into a favorable endgame, because after the rook to b8, here even rook takes a3, finally by Leela C Zero, bishop to a4, and now the queen gets again back into the game. Look how Leela is playing beautiful attacking chess, but also beautiful defensive chess. Whenever the time is right, Leela goes into defense. Whenever the time is right, Leela goes into the attack. Really great game. Queen to b4. Stockfish, of course, uses the attack on the b file. Leela drops back. Stockfish tries to battle here on the a file. Bishop to b3. Rook takes a5. Queen to a5. Queen to a3. Look at this. Beautiful defensive moves. We have queen to d8, and now Stockfish got challenged this way. Leela goes even with king to b2. What should black do now? Here Stockfish tried bishop to a2. Leela says thank you. King takes a2, and of course you can take out now the queen, but there's simply too much material that Leela C Zero grabbed here. Two minor pieces and the rook for the queen is simply too much here. The good part, I think, about White's game is that, again, the pieces are really sticked. They're really glued together. They're compact. So the queen only cannot create any attacking chances. Of course, Stockfish tried with a check. Leela goes here. Queen to d7, rook to h1, protecting here the h3 square, not allowing Stockfish to get somehow behind. I don't know, getting here the queen on h2. But I think even in that scenario, this would be defendable with the normal knight to c3. But Leela is not allowing any counterplay here for Stockfish. Queen to a4, nothing spectacular. King to d3. If you place a check, then of course here knight to c3 is again solving all of the positional problems. Queen to a1, knight to c2, kicking away the queen. Bishop to f1. We have knight to f7, bishop to h3, controlling now also the access by the queen again on this diagonal. Queen to f8, knight to e1, knight to d8, and now knight to d2. Again, a couple of repositions, and finally Leela plays f4, simply breaks out now the position. If you play, of course, something like e takes f4, then the huge threat is always something like knight to f3, and then followed with e5. This could be very knight to f3, maybe rook to e1, then e5. Then again we would have a great control of the center, and the rook would come into the game probably. Then we would create again this maybe pass pawn on the d file. Again, a messed up game here for black. So here, that's why queen to h4 by Leela. We have f5 by the fish. Queen to g3 check, nothing spectacular. Knight to f3, but now comes the move g5. Now again, I'm telling Stockfish because usually we see Stockfish on the winning side, but now Leela C Zero pulled off a beautiful rook to g1. Beautiful move here by Leela, because after queen to h3, Leela sacrifice the piece, and okay, you cannot do the fork on g5 because the knight is pinned, but Leela says I have enough here with rook to g5. Again, my pieces are well placed. Again, I have a pass pawn on the f file. The king is out of game. No good checks by the queen are possible. So here Leela C Zero calculated this position in a beautiful way. Knight to f7. We have here king to e2. Of course, you cannot take. Again, now the fork is possible. The game would be over. After king to e2, knight to h6, and Leela slowly but surely pushes now the pawn. The problem is now knight to f7 to create the blockade. It's not working because of rook to g7. After f6, king to h8 was played. Rook to g6 hits now the piece. Leela played rook to g7. Again, a check. King to h8, and now knight to g5. Again, a beautiful move. Look at this. This pawn is connected to the rook is connected to the knight. Again, really again a beautiful glued together compact position by all of the pieces of Leela. Queen to h2, we have now a beautiful king to d1. You can deliver one more check, but then after king to c2, again you don't have here very good checks anymore. So queen to f4, we have rook to g6. What should you do? If you play something like knight to g8 in order to attack this pawn further, then actually you get checkmated with this beautiful sequence. Knight to f7 followed with rook to g7. So this is not working. So look at this. This would be also spectacular checkmate here by white. So after move rook to g6, queen to f2 was played, and now this knight is lost from this point on. Obviously, the game is a one-way ticket in white's favor. King to g8, king to c2, bringing the king in security. f7 here by Leela C Zero, king to g7. Rook takes d6. Everything is possible now in this position. h3 here by by Stockfish. Even if you play queen to f4, then rook to d8, of course, obviously wins the game. If you try queen to g5, then we have a promotion. So nothing spectacular again here for black. After rook to d6, Stockfish tried h3. We have rook to d8. Now we have queen to f6, attacking the knight, and now rook to g8. The king has to step back. Now we have knight to f3. We have h2. Now we have a promotion of the piece. After queen to f8, rook takes f8 here. Another promotion happened, but of course the king is lined up on the h file. After a couple more moves here, Stockfish got checkmated by the beautiful piece activity of whites, and after move knight to e5, the game was over. So, Stockfish destroyed, which had, as I said in the beginning of the video, huge impact on the results of the semifinals. Actually, Leela C Zero won the semifinals of the TCEC season 25, which is really crazy. They had the same point count in the end, but because Leela C Zero won more games, Leela C Zero actually finished on the first place, which is really crazy, which is, I think, a great thing for us, because probably we'll see a beautiful and spectacular super final between Stockfish and Leela C Zero. We have to say Stockfish is much stronger than Leela in this faster time format, because parallelly to this competition that we follow now, there is also this computer rapid chess championship that you can follow now on chess.com, in which Stockfish is really destroying Leela. But this is a classical time format chess tournament in which the engines have 1 hour on the clock to calculate all of the moves, in which Leela is perfectly fine, I think. So you see, Leela can compete again against Stockfish. It's not the first time that we have seen that the Stockfish gets destroyed by Leela C Zero. It will be, I think, again, incredible super final for us to follow. I still think that probably it will be maybe a win by Stockfish 16, but I really hope that this TCEC competitions and some other tournaments are getting more competitive, because it's always boring to see, of course, always the Stockfish engine winning every tournament. But of course, if it is the strongest engine, it should win every tournament. But sometimes, as I said, we need further competition. Also, the Torch engine is here. The Dragon engine is not so strong anymore. I'm not sure why. But look at this. As I said, Leela is now the winner of the semifinals and has now great chances in the super finals of the TCEC season 25. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Interesting positional game. It wasn't, of course, such a brutal tactical game that we used to see in the top engine world, but in my opinion, a beautiful defensive performance here by Leela C Zero. Really one of the best defensive games that I've seen in my life. So, okay, if you want to see more epic games like this, check out our the Chess Games Played by Computer series with some more games played by Leela Zero, Stockfish, AlphaZero, many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say? Chess is the best, of course.